What's going on, everyone? Thanks so much for tuning in to another episode of the Ducks Dish podcast. I'm your host, Max Torres with Scoop Duck on 3, coming to you on Tuesday, November 18th, 2025. It is USC week as the number 17 Trojans head to Eugene for a matchup with the number 8 Ducks. And of course, we know that the updated playoff rankings will be coming out later on this evening. But at the time of recording, it's number 8 versus number 17. Top 25 matchup. I think I saw somewhere that this is the first time Oregon and USC have both been ranked in the same game since 2015. And it's going to be a fun one out there in Eugene. College game day is going to be on campus, and we are going to have you guys covered from start to finish over at scoopduck.com. Very exciting episode with our guy Ted Leroux today. But before that, this episode is brought to you by the Derman Law Firm PC. Attorney Jacob Y. Derman is a car accident lawyer who fights against the insurance companies for injured Oregonians. If you've been in a motor vehicle accident, call or text Jacob directly at 541-241-6470. That's 541-241-6470. Jacob was born in Medford, raised in Bend, went to college here in Eugene, and now takes cases across every county in Oregon. And he's a diehard Ducks fan. He hasn't missed a single game in person, home or away, every season. I am joined by my good friend Ted Leroux of That Show Out West and a contributor over at scoopduck.com. Ted, how are you, my friend?
Oh, I'm doing good. This is the Tuesday TED Talk that I have been dreaming about since the beginning of the season. We are going back to the pack this week with USC and Washington, the two remaining games. Of course, as you mentioned, College Game Day is going to be there for this Trojans matchup, the final regular season home game in Eugene. It's going to be a big one, and I can't wait to talk about it today.
It's going to be a big one. 12:30 p.m. kick on CBS. I know a lot of folks are a little upset about that. I don't know how this isn't a primetime game, seeing that the slate is just not that great across the sport this week. But whatever the case, we're going to be watching it and covering the heck out of it. I'm super excited for this one, Ted. There's just a feeling in the air that some of that tension from Twitter needs to be settled on the field, not from the players, but I mean, there's two fan bases on the West Coast that hate each other. It's definitely Oregon and USC.
I was doing some yard work on Sunday, and I kind of came in from doing some yard work, and I opened up the artist formerly known as the Twitter Bird, and I was kind of scrolling through it a little bit, and I was like, this feels online. It feels like it's a Wednesday already, and that was all the way back on Sunday. So just imagine what this thing is going to be like when we get to tomorrow, when we get to Thursday. This is these two fan bases don't like each other. It's plain and simple. This is what college football is meant to be, and this is why we love it. And I think kind of in your realm and your ballpark, it kind of goes back to a little bit recruiting. Remember in the spring, USC is having all that success in the spring. You've got flips, for example. Modern-day defensive lineman Tamahini Tabui goes from Oregon. He's committed to Oregon. He flips over to USC, and you've got all of this kind of that's going back and forth in the spring, and then Oregon, of course, kind of gets it together in the summer, and you've got these two programs, USC, the number one class, Oregon sits there in the top 5 looking to have their third consecutive top 5 class. I think that's kind of like has fed into this season, I think, a little bit, with USC and with Oregon. And now with the Trojans being in position, if they're able to win out, that's going to get them into the college football playoff. And now Oregon's got the opportunity to end USC's playoff dreams at Autzen Stadium. Like, there's so many storylines, so many things that you can talk about. There's one that I'm especially excited to talk about with one Bear Alexander. Maybe we'll touch on that a little bit later. That's got some layers to it. Let's just put it that way. So yeah, this is good. I would love to see this game played every single year. I know it's going to be played next year, I believe, as well. But this is these are the two programs on the West Coast, and they're fighting for West Coast supremacy. Can't wait.
I was in Eugene the last time these two teams faced off. Oregon got the win over USC. I believe the final was 36-27. The Trojans were led by the eventual Heisman Trophy winner and Caleb Williams. But I still think you can see a lot of similarities between that team and this team. The Trojans have a solid offense, but the defense isn't necessarily where it needs to be. We'll get more into that, of course, in this episode. But you mentioned recruiting. this is the biggest recruiting weekend of the
Oh,
year
yeah.
for Oregon. I already have an early look at the visitor list posted on Scoop Duck for our subscribers. So just a reminder, now is a great time to check us out. I mean, this is the biggest weekend of the season, probably to date for Oregon, and you can get a subscription started at just $1 and a year of access to The Athletic for no additional charge. So definitely had to make sure to tell you guys that if you like what we're saying here on the podcast, I think you'll like it even more over on scoopduck.com. But Ted, this is a fun one that we're going to dig into now. I think just right off the bat, the biggest matchup that I'm looking for is the Oregon secondary against these USC wide receivers.
Right.
Makai Lemon, I covered him extensively in high school when he was out in
Mhm.
my backyard at Los Alamitos. And then Jacoby Lane is another really, really good receiver. So it's going to be the biggest test yet for Oregon's secondary. And I'm excited to see what we get from Brandon Finney Jr., from Aaron Flowers, Ifeoma Badegwu, and guys like that. So this is why you recruit the caliber of defensive backs that Oregon has recruited.
That's the big matchup. I mean, if USC is gonna not only hang around but maybe win this game on the road at Oregon, it's going to be because of Jade Maiava throwing the ball to the aforementioned Makai Lemon and Jacoby Lane as well. This is the big test. This is the biggest test for this Oregon secondary. And I don't know if it's. I mean, you've had Indiana, I suppose, earlier this season. And that was a decent sized test, but yeah, this is certainly the biggest test since the Ducks loss to the Hoosiers, to see how these defensive backs are going to fare against what is arguably the best wide receiver tandem in the entire country. Like when Makai Lemon is on, he is as good as it gets. They line him up out wide, they line up him in the slot, they bring him in motion across the formation. You gotta know where he is lined up at all times. And man, I'm salivating over him. Like I said, they put him in a lot of different spots and move him around the formation, but I'm salivating at the thought of him against Brandon Finney for at the very least a majority of the afternoon. But that's the thing. You got to keep that passing game in check. Yeah, I know that the run game has been pretty decent with King Miller. You know, maybe they've had some ups and downs since the injuries of Eli Sanders and Wyman Jordan. But yeah, you got to stop this pass game. I feel like if you keep the pass game in check, for example, like what Nebraska was able to do against USC. Now, I understand the Trojans went on the road and got that win, but that was their poorest passing performance to date. Now, I'm not saying that they have to do at that level, but at least if you're in that ballpark, you feel really good that you're going to be able to stifle USC the most of the night, but that is most of the day. But that's, I think, going to be the biggest challenge. I'm sure we'll get to the offensive side of the ball in just a minute. I want to see, let's ramp up that Oregon pass rush, a little bit. This is the Ducks pass rush. I think we maybe had the best way to kind of say it. Maybe expected bigger numbers, bigger production, maybe this season. Max, I'll tell you what, it would not surprise me. We're talking about Southern California. We're talking about recruiting. It would not surprise me to see a former Monarch coming off the edge. It would not surprise me to see Nasir Wyatt get a lot of run in this game, right? We've seen him in very small doses this season just be absolute electricity coming off of the edge. And we saw it. He only played four snaps in last week's game against Minnesota, but he made the most of his snaps. It would not surprise me to kind of see him get more play, to get pressure quicker on Jaden Maiava as well. I noticed this last game against Minnesota, a lot of rotation up front, not only at the edge, but also in the interior of that defensive line. And you got it queued up for those watching on video right now, just ducking that shoulder and bam, getting in there right away. So I think he's probably the most I mean, I know this is crazy with Mateo and Tatum, and those are kind of bigger guys, more powerful guys. But when it comes to explosiveness and speed, he might be the most explosive pass rusher on this Oregon team. So I'd watch out for Nasir Wyatt to maybe get a little bit more run, to put pressure on Jade Maiava, to maybe quicken up what he wants to do and kind of get him uncomfortable.
I don't think it's that much of a stretch to say that he could be the most explosive pass rusher that Oregon has. Yeah. That doesn't mean he's the best. That doesn't mean he's the most refined or the strongest. But like watching him in high school, this is exactly what you saw in that Minnesota game when he got the pass rush. Just a guy who's incredibly fast off of the edge, incredible twitch, some really good bend, maybe a little bit undersized compared to what you're accustomed to from an edge rusher. But this is why you recruit him, because after you have Mateo Uyunglele and Tatum Tuioti coming after you, Amari Washington, all these guys, you can bring Nasir Wyatt in these special situations and just let him pin his ear back. Like maybe you kind of liken it to De'Aaron Hill coming in on offense, especially in the earlier part of the season when he was on the field. You kind of knew what to expect. When Wyatt comes on the field, you know he's coming to get after the quarterback. So I think this is a game. We'll start with offense, the defense. Actually, I think Ted. I think it makes a little bit more sense. That's where my interest lies a bit more in this matchup with USC. I think Oregon's depth along the defensive line is an absolute advantage for them and an asset that could really help them wear down this USC offense. And that's not to say that USC's offensive line isn't great, but they haven't been overly effective necessarily running the ball, and then stopping the run hasn't been a strength of them either. So this is going to be a big test for Oregon's defense, and I think it's one that they're really up to the task to answer, because Mekhi Lemon and Jacoby Lane are phenomenal, but if Jaden Mayava doesn't have time to get the ball off, I mean, nothing's happening.
Yeah, and that's the pass rush, I think, is going to be extremely key for the Ducks in this game, is continuously getting after Jaden Mayava, doing things that maybe he's not comfortable doing, maybe quickening the clock maybe a little bit throughout this matchup. So, you combine that with some really good play on the back end. That's what you want to do. I feel good. When I look at the what you talked about, maybe USC's, dare I call it, inconsistencies, maybe running the football is maybe a decent word for that. When I look at that, I feel very good. I feel really good on the interior, especially with the rotation, the size advantage that Oregon is going to have at the defensive tackle and nose tackle positions. And here's the fact of the matter, Max. We've, ever since the Penn State game, Bear Alexander has been playing really good football game after he's playing the best football of his career. That is, and I don't think it's particularly close. But this game, considering maybe some of the talk that has come out of USC since Bear Alexander left USC. So not only is Bear playing good football, he's going to have so much motivation coming into this game. I think he could be just an absolute wild animal up front against the those interior offensive linemen for USC. And then you factor in Amari, and then the rotation with Terrence Green. Been seeing a little bit more of Jericho Johnson a little bit in meaningful snaps as well. So they've got a big size advantage. They're rotating. Their bodies are remaining fresh. I feel confident that Oregon's going to be able, at the very least, limit the USC run game. Now it kind of depends how many big plays can USC get over the top. How consistently great can their pass game be when maybe that's the dimension of their offense that they really need to rely on. So that's where we kind of come back to the Iffies, the Theron Johnsons, the Brandon Finneys, guys like that. How consistent can they be on the outside? We saw Brandon Finney against Minnesota. He kind of gave up a bigger play to start. I mean, he was right there in position, just maybe didn't turn around quick enough. And then he had a penalty, but he responded well when Minnesota kept on attacking him throughout the game. And I'm really interested to see, how USC is going to attack. Where are they? Which matchups on Oregon defensively are they going to try to exploit? So, I mean, that's the matchup. But I feel very good about Oregon containing the run, but it just comes down to limiting those big pass plays. And if they can kind of use the blueprint that Nebraska put out there and kind of put their own spin on it, I think they're going to be okay. I mean, look, I understand this is a big game for USC as well, and I understand that the talent that they have, but I just think Oregon has more paths to victory than USC does. If USC isn't slinging the ball, getting it to Lane, getting it to Lemon, getting it to their guys down the field, I'm not sure. We know Oregon, this is a team that'd be like, okay, if Dante Moore isn't humming and the pass game isn't moving, all right, we can run the ball because that's the strength of our team right now. We can do it either way. USC, I'm not sure if I would, believe in them in this game against that Oregon front, is maybe a good way to put it. To be able to lean on King Miller, you're going to run the ball 25 times, you're going to run the ball 30 times, and you're going to power and physical your way to a victory. That just doesn't seem to connect the dots with me right now. So that's why I kind of believe Oregon, especially at home, this is probably going to be the most juiced up crowd of the season. I think a lot of things kind of favor the Ducks in this matchup.
And out physicaling an opponent just hasn't been the brand of USC football.
Yep.
And I don't say that to say that they haven't improved from a year ago, because I think they have. I don't think it would be fair or smart to say that they
Mhm.
haven't gotten better from a year ago, but I still think there's a gap at the line of scrimmage. And that's kind of been the story between these two teams since Dan Lanning and Lincoln Riley got to their respective programs at the same time. And for Oregon defensively, I think that they have to kind of do some of the very basic things here, specifically with the safeties. Just keep everything in front of you and over communicate like your life depends on it, because we've
Right.
seen a couple of lapses here and there the past couple of weeks where someone's kind of gotten behind the defensive backs, and if it ends up being a close game, that could be a backbreaker for a defense. So I feel pretty good about where Oregon's defense is at. Devin
Mhm.
Jackson was able to go last week,
Yep.
so that was someone that they didn't have against Iowa. So I think they should be fairly healthy, if not at completely full strength defensively, when they play the Trojans this weekend. So I'm feeling good about where things are at for Oregon's defense. They've been playing some really good ball. Now I'm going to be interested to see what, maybe less interested, I guess. The question has kind of been throughout the season, throughout some of these ups and downs. Oregon's only lost one game, but it hasn't always looked pretty in the wins. So we
Right.
found ourselves asking, which version of Dante Moore are we going to get? How is the offense going to be coming out? Like, are they going to come out hot, or are they going to come out cold and need a couple drives to get things together? Granted, it was Minnesota last week, but Dante Moore was absolutely dialed in, 27 for
Right.
30. I think he was just over 300 yards, and obviously had some touchdowns to his resume as well. So I feel really good also about where this Oregon offense is at, specifically as it pertains to running the ball with a former USC Trojan in Emmanuel Pregnon leading the
Yep.
way. And Oregon's running backs are just absolutely humming right now, led by
Mhm.
Jordan Davison and Noah Whittington.
I mean, yeah, this run game it's a very different looking run game, but production wise, it looks like, it looks like a Chip Kelly run game from the numbers that they're putting up. It looks like, the LaMichaels, the Kenyon Barners, the Royce Freemans, the Jonathan Stewart's going. I mean, all these great names that have kind of come through this program. They're just, and Jordan Davison is just, oh man, he's my favorite. I freaking love that guy. I mean, he is so fun to watch carrying the football. Before, when he really started to get moving, you're like, well, I think he's the best Oregon running back. But now I don't think there's a question. He is the best they got right now. And it's interesting to be like, ever since that Jaden Lamar injury, right? They were kind of rotating in 27 a little bit more. When he went out, that's where things really seemed to take off, where Davison got more run, and you're seeing Noah Whittington coming off of that injury, and then you kind of have De'Aaron Hill focus into that role as that speed guy. When these two guys are kind of pounding the middle between the guards or between the tackles, let's get it to the outside, see if we get a matchup on the corner to De'Aaron Hill. I love the way that they're scheming up this run game right now. If I'm Will Stein in this game, I'm coming out and be like, all right, we're going to line up. We're going to run the football. We're going to have, your best offensive lineman from last year, our best offensive lineman this year, Emmanuel Pregnon, lead the way. Left side, right side, doesn't matter where he's lined up. We're going to run over him. We're gonna let 75 kind of pave the way a little bit, and you just dare USC to stop it. I mean, you look at I tweeted this out yesterday. I mean, Oregon is averaging over 200 yards per game over the last four, and USC is giving up, 400 yards per game over the last four. Specifically, Oregon is averaging way over 264.5 yards per game over the last four. Now, I understand,
Crazy.
USC, I mean, that Notre Dame game, they might have had over 300, the Irish rush for against USC. And they face some pretty solid teams. And that's been kind of the pushback on that specific tweet. But I'm looking at be like, Oregon is one of the best rushing offenses in the country right now. So you can say, well, maybe the competition is a little bit different. But Oregon's been able to do it against good run defenses. They've been able to do it against Iowa. Say what you want about the Wisconsin Badgers. That's a good run defense. That's maybe the only good part of that team in that program right now, and like USC, statistically, and I think the at least my eyeballs tell the story. They're not as good of a run defense as maybe some of those two that I mentioned within there. It could be debatable with Minnesota as well. So, considering those facts, Oregon, you just got to go out there and dare them to stop you. And then when they eventually bring, an seventh guy, an eighth guy, whatever it is, when you bring more bodies into the box, that's when you hit what's been successful this year. That's when you hit the play action. We'll see if DeCorian Moore is able to go. We'll see who's able to go specifically at wide receiver and what they have. Even a guy like Malik Benson on the outside, we know the speed that he has. That seems to be, and Kenyon Sadiq finally looks like, lingering injuries this year. He finally looks like kind of fully healthy after that game last week. And then, like I said, that's when you hit the play action. That's when you hit the big plays over the top. This is a USC defense, 10th in the Big Ten against the run, 10th in the Big Ten against the pass. I mean, their secondary hasn't been outstanding, I guess, this year. So that seems to be the straightforward path that Oregon can have offensively on Saturday.
In that Notre Dame game, the Irish ran for 306 yards and 3 touchdowns against USC, averaging just a hair under 7 yards a carry. And then Iowa last week, they were averaging, I think it was around 5 yards a pop on the ground. So it's like, fool me once, fool me twice, whatever. That is a fact. USC has not excelled stopping the run, and Oregon has crushed opponents running the ball. So it feels like things are coming together from an offensive standpoint as far as an identity goes. They're really, run the heck out of the ball, still balanced overall, but like that is something that Will Stein is clearly committed to. I think he's been kind of in his bag creatively as a play caller, which is very encouraging. Kenyon Sadiq really stepped up with some of these guys that are banged up at wide receiver, caught all 8 of his targets last week. Could have been 2 touchdowns, but it was just 1. I love Jamari Johnson and the role that he's taken on for the Ducks. I don't think he's necessarily being talked about enough because he's probably going to be back next year. And this tight end room is really, really good, especially with Roger Taliapaga stepping up and making some plays as well. You talked about some of the wide receivers. Obviously, we don't know if Gary Bryant or DeCorian Moore are going to be available this week. Kind of one of the latest conversations that I had with a source suggested that, Bryant isn't 100%, which isn't really that shocking considering how he exited the field in that game against Iowa. I want to say it was Cade Catton, the tight end that just came over and swept him up and carried him up. So that wasn't very encouraging as far as, what we last saw of Bryant. But the Ducks have proven that they have the depth to keep that ball moving. And they essentially used Sadiq as a wide receiver last week. And you just love that. So the depth is being tested, but I think it's answering the call.
Yeah, I think it's there. One last thing on the USC run defense, I think that's worth noting. And that loss to Illinois this season gave up 171 yards on the ground. That was 5 yards per carry. You go back to that Nebraska game, 188 yards on the ground and 4.7 yards per carry. So just a few more examples to kind of illustrate that point. But yeah, you kind of get to this passing game a little bit. I thought we'd maybe see a little bit more from Jeremiah McClellan last week, and if you continue to have these injuries, I'd expect him to kind of really step into a bigger role. We've seen him flash this season. I think we've been waiting, maybe waiting for that 4, 5, 6 catch game, 70, 80 yards and a score or whatever it is. Whatever stat line it ends up being. So maybe this is that game for Jeremiah McClellan. With these injuries, you've seen Justice Lowe coming out of the slot, Cooper Perry coming out of the slot as well. So, yeah, I think there's depth. And, if the wide receiver depth is still not where it needs to be against this USC team, you're going to see a lot of 12 personnel. You're going to see a lot of those 2 tight kids, Sadiq and Johnson, on the field at the same time. I talked about earlier in the season, maybe it was even preseason. I can't exactly remember. I kind of called Jamari Johnson the forgotten man, not because of Will Stein forgets about him, but the defense kind of forgets about him. When you got a game plan for Sadiq and Moore when he's healthy and all these other guys, Jamari Johnson is just a guy that can find the hole in the zone. He's a big target. he can get 50 to 20 yards when all the attention is kind of focused on a lot of different places. So, and we saw that these last two games. Prior to these last couple of games, where of course Sadiq was not able to go last week, and then you've had these wide receiver injuries. He had the 9 catches in 7 games. Now he's got 8 catches the last 2 games. So they're clearly trying to get him involved a lot more in this offense, and it's just another weapon late in the year that they're developing right now. And that's kind of the thing when you have a team like Oregon that's had the injuries. Okay, this guy even way back to the spring. All right, Evan Stewart goes down. Time for somebody else to get that opportunity and step up and get that reps. Okay, Malik Benson is the guy that stepped up into that starting role, and he's been really good. Now, if Evan Stewart, if he's able to come back in November, December, January, whenever, hopefully he's able to be back, now you just have that extra option, a guy that has gotten more reps, and that's in that situation, and then you're able to have possibly this other option come back. So it's I think a lot of these Oregon players have made the most of their opportunities this season, and then hopefully, whether it's at the end of the regular year, whether it's this week, Washington, whenever it is, hopefully when this team is healthy and gets an opportunity to make a playoff run, then you got so much more weapons with so much more experience, and then you can really, really let it fly.
It's going to be a big one for both Oregon and USC on Saturday in Eugene, and we have some parting thoughts here. But before that, just a quick message from one of our sponsors here. Duck fans, are you going to an Oregon game this season? If you are, the Oakway Lifestyle Center at the corner of Oakway and Coburg is the destination for Duck fans. Whatever you're looking for, they've got it all. Get a bite to eat at Center River Brewing or PF Chang's. Check out shops like Lululemon or Nordstrom Rack. Need a place to stay? Book your lodging at the Hyatt Place at Oakway Center and visit their rooftop bar. The Oakway Lifestyle Center is walking distance from Austin Stadium, has something for everybody, and it's a great post-game place to celebrate another Duck victory. Max Torres and Ted Leroux back with you on the Ducks Dish podcast, talking some Oregon versus USC as the Trojans come to Eugene for a Big Ten rivalry clash. Ted, I am juiced for this game. We got 2 more games left in the regular season here, and both of them are against rivals. So from your and my standpoints, just for looking at the storylines, I don't think there's any shortage of that. I think that this is a game where we're really going to see Oregon's depth and the roster construction come into play, because we saw both of these teams take very different approaches when both of these coaches got hired. Lincoln Riley leaned heavily on the transfer portal, and Dan Lanning used the transfer portal, but also put a major emphasis on high school guys. And we're seeing a lot of those young players, true freshmen, redshirt sophomores, making an impact on this year's team. So I think overall, like to your point, I think there's more paths to victory for Oregon. They're a more well-rounded team than USC is. That doesn't mean that USC can't give them a fight. That doesn't mean that there's no world where this is a close game. But I think especially with this game being at home, even though it's a day game, I think that the Autzen atmosphere is going to be electric. And I feel like Oregon's going to show up for this one.
Yeah, I think they're going to be ready to go. I think, Dan's kind of this master motivator, and he's got a way to kind of get these kids ready to play. And I think this is a stretch that we've all been waiting for for them to be able to play their best as to finish the season. And now I think that's I think where we're at. It's like, okay, now's the time where we want to see this team really kick it into gear. Okay, this is this 2-game stretch where you've got 2 rivals on the schedule, and it's just like that Oregon is a deeper football team than both of these teams. They're a better football team, I think, than both of these teams are right now. They just got to go out there and take care of business and end up getting in a good playoff spot, and maybe they're that team that gets on a roll at the end of the year. And really carries that momentum into the college football playoff. But yeah, it all starts this Saturday. It's going to be, man. Yeah, I think we all wish it was a night game, but the powers that be, the suits determined that was not going to be an option. So here we are. But either way, I think it's going to be pretty raucous. I think it's going to be pretty pretty excited over there, and I think that's going to be a big factor. I think the crowd is going to kind of like last year against Ohio State. I'm not sure if it's going to be quite at that level since it's not a 4:30 local kickoff, but I've got a feeling that this crowd is going to swing, and maybe they're going to cause some false starts. They're going to maybe swing this game one way or another. So I've got a lot of confidence, I think, headed into this game, and I think Oregon's they're gonna physical their way as much as they need to against the Trojans.
I'm excited for this one. I feel like we've said it a million times, but this is definitely one of those games that you had circled on the calendar when the schedule was released in the preseason, Ted.
Yeah.
Before we get out of here, man, just anything you want to plug going over at that show out west or out your way?
Yeah, we'll be doing a very in-depth preview coming up on probably Thursday. Out there, and then typical stuff with the recap over at Scoop Duck, and kind of trying to put something together, a column on Scoop Duck talking about let's embrace physicality, with these West Coast games, and them at Washington and USC look very like traditional Pac-10, but for Oregon right now, it's all about embracing the line of scrimmage, embracing that physicality, maybe going forward. So working on that. Hopefully we'll get that up fairly soon, maybe in the next day or so. So it's an exciting week. I guess I'm just enjoying this week so far. I'm just because rivalries, and especially these regional games, it's what makes the sport great. And I'm glad that this season we get to end the game with two West Coast rivalries here at the end.
There's only so many rivalry games that we get in a given season, Ted, and this season has certainly flown by. So
Yep.
we got to make sure we go out there and enjoy every second of it. If you want to find more of Ted, you can find him on That Show Out West on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. And you can also see him on X at Ted on the Ducks. You want to find more of me, follow me at Torres Sports everywhere you are on social media. Subscribe to the Scoop Duck on 3 YouTube channel and share the Ducks Dish podcast. But USC week rolls on. We'll have you covered over on scoopduck.com, and we'll be back with another episode later on this week. Thanks for tuning in to the Ducks Dish podcast.